development committee of the management team, because that's something, and that's an area that I am particularly interested in. And I think it's very important for the management team to be engaged in as part of our mission of promoting strong neighborhoods and inclusive prosperity. The development committee hasn't met in a while. It only meets periodically to look at issues that planning, zoning, and development affecting the neighborhoods in our CMT district that we just don't have time to deal with. We don't have time for in our regular monthly meetings to look at with the thoroughness that they deserve. And we want to delve a little deeper into them because we think there's more to explore. And I thought that the subject that we'll be looking at tonight was particularly appropriate for that, because it's not just about developing a specific parcel of land, but it takes a step back and looks at how land use policy, zoning, state safe streets, walkability, economic development, municipal finances, how all these things are interrelated. And we're looking microscopically at 10 Wall Street or the Coliseum site as case studies, but we're also looking macroscopically at this whole 50-year-old incrustation of land use policies and regulations that we're now kind of collectively as a city and as a society trying to re-examine. And I mean, to the extent that we're going to try to get to positive reform, I think the approach we need to take is to revisit these policies proactively and holistically, rather than just reacting to individual development projects as they come across the transom, which is too often how we do it in the management team. I think we're all aware of many discussions of zoning reform that are happening right now at the state level, at the local level, at all levels of government. There was an article today in the New Haven Independent about legalizing ADUs. There are articles every day about proposals that desegregate. Connecticut is trying to get passed in the state legislature. It's all over the place. The management team does not really take positions on individual pieces of legislation, just as we don't really take positions on individual applications for zoning relief. And we're not taking a position on this New Haven at a Crossroads report. But even without, putting our thumb on the scale, we are very glad to see that all of these important conversations are taking place. We want to be part of facilitating that conversation here locally and bringing as many diverse voices to the table as possible. So with that, I think I'm going to turn things over to our 10 Wall Street, New Haven at a Crossroads team, and maybe the team members can kind of introduce themselves and take 20 or 30 minutes to present, and then we'll do some Q&A. We're trying to keep things informal here, so if you have a burning question or clarification issue to ask the presenters, feel free to ask that during the presentation, but otherwise maybe try to wait until the end. And if you're an audience member, feel free to introduce yourself as well in the chat. We'd love to know what neighborhood you're from. We'd love to know if you want to say something about something that you saw that was positive in the New Haven at a Crossroads report, something you strongly agreed with, or something you strongly disagreed with. You can do both of those if you're feeling frisky. So please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat. And with that, I'll turn things over to Paul Wessel.
Great. So thanks for the time. We're going to have a short presentation from three of us. Joel Schiavone is going to open up with sort of big picture view. I'm actually trying to narrow the focus down, and then Robert's going to drive us home with a discussion around 10 Wall Street in particular. And I think we have large ideas, but we see 10 Wall Street as an opportunity to demonstrate the viability of some of these ideas in a very real and concrete way. And just so you all know, I went to Mike Piscatelli, the Economic Development Administrator. I said we were interested in looking at 10 Wall Street, which is a city-owned property, in a more creative way. Mike said, that's great. You should take it to the downtown Worcester Square management team, and then come back to us and let us know what their sense is of this. So while you may not take positions, on specific development projects or proposals. What's exciting here is two things. One is we're getting involved before the developer is selected and before the city has let the project out, which is often not the case. And secondly, the city has said to us, take it to the management team, get the response, and come back to us. So with that, I'll turn it over to Joel to open us up. Joel, you want to unmute yourself? You got to unmute yourself. There you go. Yep, we still can't hear you. You're unmuted, Joel, but we can't hear you. According to Zoom, you're unmuted, but we still can't hear you. The joys of technology. No, we still can't hear you. While you're figuring that out, let me do my little piece. And I just, Aaron talked about we can't do this stuff piecemeal. I think there's a balance of piecemeal and holistic, and this may be a piecemeal opportunity that we can take advantage of. And sometimes we get lost in the big picture. And I want to try and narrow down what the opportunity might be here. So I'm going to share my screen for a second. Everybody see my what we are getting slide? Yeah. Yes? All right. So when I look around town, this is what I see. And this is the Blake Hotel at High and George. This is residential development at Crown and High. This is residential development at Audubon and Orange. This is what's happening in the Hill right now, right by the med school and the hospital. And it all looks the same, right? And this is what the market's delivering. This is what business as usual is. We get buildings like this one on the right rather than the church in the middle there. But it's not what we like. It's not what we want to see. What we like are buildings like this, which is directly across the street, Orange Street, from one of the buildings you just saw. This on Orange Street, which is again a mix of new development and old buildings. These are old buildings on State Street. These are buildings on Grand Avenue in Fairhaven, which are small enough to turn over regularly. This is the old Romeo and Joe's, again, a small property that's now the Atticus Market. This is was a Chinese restaurant on State Street and will soon, as the effects of the pandemic lessen, will become another restaurant or something else because these small buildings can turn over. And closer to home in Worcester Square, these are the kinds of buildings that we like to see. This is Court Street that we all love. This is a dentist office on Chapel Street. This is a coffee shop on Chapel Street. Closed now, but it'll reopen or it'll reopen as something else. And the question for me is, how can we develop more of what we like? And that's what I think our opportunity is here. And our opportunity is with the approach to lean development that Robert's going to talk some more about. Joel, were you able to connect your microphone? Doesn't look like it. You might want to call in and see if you can get on that way. But in the meantime, why don't I turn it over to Robert to share with his thoughts about 10 Wall Street and what we might do here in lean development.
Okay, I need to share my screen. How do I?
Yep. Down at the bottom in the middle, there's something that says share screen.
Yeah.
Click on it.
Yeah.
And then click on whatever it is you're trying to share, either the screen or the program.
Okay, just a minute.
We're figuring this out.
So can you see that?
Not yet.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Zoom. Hit share screen. You've disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh, let me make you a co-host. That'll help. Robert or more. Make co-host. Now you should be able to do it. Sorry about that.
Okay. Let's see here.
There we go.
Yeah. So, what I want to get across are two things here, picking up on Paul's remarks. One is that not only are these projects big and similar in appearance, but they also have another thing in common, is that they involve a lot of money. And if we look around at our city, we don't see much built by, ordinary local people. Sure, there's little additions or whatever, but nobody's taking on a lot, buying a lot and doing a project. These are all people from out of town. So the first thing that I want to get across is the purpose of what's called lean development, which is basically getting the fat out, or that picture down in the lower right, removing the red tape, is how can we get local people, how can we get projects affordable? And it turns out that our zoning code works the other way. It by having a minimum lot size, minimum unit size, et cetera, it makes it impossible for people of lesser means, particularly young adults, is my interest, to get involved. So the big push of this is to see how we can get people involved that are of lesser means. Also, when local people get involved, they tend to care more about their community. They want something that's lasting. They want something that is contributing to their neighborhood. These are all good things, which these projects that basically drop in from out of town don't do. The second thing I wanted to get across is the benefits to the city, and I'll go through this in more detail. But this is not a entitlement program or a feel-good charitable effort. This approach, this lean urbanism, actually pays more taxes to the city and houses more people than these big projects. And I'll be going through that. So what is lean urbanism? It's something that's been in the works for at least 10 years. It's a national movement. It started in Detroit, where I won't go into the history because we don't have time. Basically, it's open access, which means allowing people to get involved, local people to get involved with their businesses and their communities. It's open source, which means the tools that are created are for everyone to use. It's open-ended, which is to say it's not happening all at once. It's an ongoing process as small projects accrue over time and build neighborhoods. It's based on common sense instead of tons and tons of regulations. And then there are tools being devised and they're freely available, is the point of this slide. Why am I not oh, did you do that, Paul?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, it changed
Right.
slides. Okay, so this is 10 Wall Street, which you can see in the 4 pictures on the left, in the upper left. It's right next to the FBI building and behind the Children's Museum, and it touches State Street there. And there's that funny little triangular parcel in the corner, which is not part of the site, which is where the Farmington Canal goes through. The picture on the left is the proposed development. And what these are is buildings that are small. They are 4 stories tall, and they have 10 units in each one. And we are doing this all as, I mean, this demonstration project would be done by one developer and be used as a demonstration to have people be able to see how this works. But eventually how this would work is that this 1 acre parcel would get divided into however many buildings there are there. And I'm forgetting now, it's 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, looks like 15 buildings. So there'd be 15 properties. The properties would be affordable because they're very small. And so that a local person can buy the property, and we have gone to great pains to design these buildings. And this is, I mean, an individual person can design their own building. But we've designed these buildings to work with the code. We're not violating the code, and I mean, talking about the building code in any way, but we have found outlets. For example, if you have no more than 4 units per floor, and you're going up 3 stories, you don't need an elevator or a second means of egress. So that cuts costs. Because these are vertical circulation, we don't have long halls that cost more. I could go through a long list of things that we've done to make these less expensive. What we have that you're looking at, which I have better pictures of in a minute, are what we call skinny streets. These are streets that you might, if you're familiar with Beacon Hill in Boston, they're streets like that. They're about 8 feet wide. They're kind of wide sidewalks. They're pedestrian scaled, and but they're wide enough that a police car or first responder kind of vehicle can get into the project, but they're not for car access generally. Although if you're moving or whatever, I'm sure you can bring a car in to deal with your luggage or whatever. Then there are fronts and backs. The fronts face the streets. The backs face little gardens, and 10 feet, they're 10 feet deep. And the thought is that in the back, people can actually do agricultural things, not just, they can grow food, etc. And there are little walkways that you can see, walking paths that go through the community so that you can access the back of your house and your garden without having to go through your house from the street. The other thing that you'll see is that the gray are commercial uses. These would be small, like a cafe, a little grocer, an agriculture. Somebody, if people are interested in agriculture, a store might be selling agricultural supplies, etc. These are mixed use, so obviously the commercial's on the first floor, and then there still would be 3 floors above that. Oh, by the way, we get 4 floors until next year, because the way the IBC is written, the 3rd floor can have a floor above it if it's connected within the building. So
That's the International Building Code.
International Building Code, right? And New Haven is switching. We're currently on the 2015 IBC, and they're switching next year. So if we can hurry and get this, if people like it, get this approved, we can build 4-story buildings, which makes it even cheaper. In the lower left, we've got micro manufacturing, and I'm going to show you in a minute what that is. What we're trying to create here is a full neighborhood, not just a housing project. So we have 2 micro manufacturing facilities or leasable spaces, and then we have 4 what we're calling innovation labs. These are basically startup innovation kind of well, you know, where you're starting a business isn't necessarily a manufacturing business. You're starting ideas, innovation. On the right, the left is sort of what the residential side looks like, and on the right is what the mixed use commercial and residential above. It worked this time. As I said, from the city's point of view, how this is good is that lean urbanism does not require subsidies or tax deferrals or reductions. It works all by itself. We have a put together pro forma where we're paying the appraised value of the property. So we're not asking for free property. We're not asking for, it actually works if we don't even do a phase in. But a phase in is good, so we probably would take advantage of that. So it pays, unfortunately, all the pictures are over my notes here. I don't know if you all can see that, but anyway, it pays higher taxes, but has affordable rents. And the explanation behind that is I compare it to buying a wheel of cheese, a big wheel of Parmesan cheese, let's call it. You cut that up into smaller little wedges, which you sell online at the grocery store. If you add up the price of all those wedges of cheese, it will add up to about double the cost of the wheel. And so that's how this works. The small properties are inexpensive, but when you add them all up, they come out to be more than the wheel. So that we have a comparison here of our project at 10 Wall Street compared to a project on Chapel Street, 1245, which is the novella. And these are actual figures that we have gotten from the tax office, et cetera. That they're projects that would be about the same value in the 20 million range. I mean, to build the entire Wall Street thing. But the Wall Street project would be paying $650 per acre in taxes. We know that the novella paid $190,000. We also know that we get more units to the acre. So we're getting 169 units to the acre compared to the novella's 135. What it says down there below is that the Audubon Square, which isn't finished yet, so we don't know the tax, but we do know how many units they're putting there, and it comes to 85 units per acre. So just showing how this is a win-win. This is all good for the city. And what I hope you can all read, I can't quite read, is this in the lower right, is that rather than raising taxes and lowering services to balance our out of balance budget, we can erase the $6 million deficit and chip away at the $1 billion. I said $1 billion of unfunded pension liabilities, which basically means that city employees are going to very soon not be receiving. This is people already receiving their pensions and future pensions. The city won't be able to pay out pensions, which is unfortunate. If they were to activate what we're calling economically unproductive land, which is the city, for example, owns 1,000 parcels of land, which are all unbuildable because they're non-conforming lots. They're not big enough. But not only could you build, if you got rid of the minimum lot requirement, not only could you build one building, but you could, as I've shown you, divide that up into lots of smaller properties and actually get lean, get affordable lots and affordable buildings. Now, what do the participants have that's to their favor? And basically, lean, as I've been saying, deputizes local developers and property owners, especially young adults, to build affordably within their means, so that you don't need giant investment bankers helping you do this. That if you actually take a unit in one of these buildings, you qualify for a simple mortgage. And you can go to our only local bank, the New Haven Bank, and take out a mortgage and build these projects. Lean urbanism, it makes better neighborhoods. And also the affordable construction and affordable rents do not require subsidies. This is a slide just showing you an example of small and micro manufacturing that might go in those two facilities up in the upper left. These are actual products, and the paperclip is there to show you how small they are. But people all over are making these small products that go into bigger things like an iPhone or a computer or some kind of technical device. But you only need small equipment to make this stuff. Filmmaking is another small thing that can be done in a small space. We just put random things up here. Ghost kitchens, I don't know if you know what ghost kitchens are, but they are kitchens that serve all kinds of food. You don't go to the kitchen. It's not a restaurant, but they will cook Chinese, they will cook Thai, they will cook American, Italian, and it was basically developed in the COVID era because you can order, from their menu and pick what kind of food you want. Textiles are great people to inhabit a small or micro manufacturing facility. And makerspace and 3D printing on the right. That quad drone is actually a 3D made product. Now it's not doing it. Okay. It's not advancing. There. Okay, this is an example of an apartment building where you can see we have 4 small units per floor. On the ground floor, they're ADA units. We have two units on the ground floor. But once again, we are taking advantage of the code so that most of the units, we can get more units in above, and therefore for the owner of this building, derive more revenue, especially with the 3rd and 4th floor being connected, and then sort of what they look like on the street. This I don't want to take you through. This is the spreadsheet that we did for this. I'm just pointing out 2 things. One is the rents that we can be charging for these apartments, $700 and $1,000, which you won't see at these, I'm calling them big box.
You're muted, Robert.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
So I don't know when you lost me, but on the left circle are the rents that we're able to charge. And as you can see, they're quite low, $700 and $1,000 for the one bedroom, and $700 for the lofts. And and on the right is what's called the net operating income, or the NOI. And this is the income after all expenses have been paid, including tax, what is left. And so if a person were to build this, all their living expenses would be paid for. And they would have $6,000 left over to buy groceries. So it's a nice nest egg for a young person to have, that basically means they're free to go out and do a brand new startup project where you aren't having income for a while, because you're living in a situation that you don't have to pay for. All right, I don't know why this is doing this. It's not advancing.
I got it up.
You what?
I got it. So this is Robert's final slide.
Oh, so the final slide is just a picture. Did you advance it?
Yep, that's it. Right?
I don't
Yeah.
see it on my computer.
my
Oh, this is Zoom. Every time I use Zoom, it's a different problem.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Alright.
the picture is not on my computer, but
Okay.
I know the picture, and it's two projects, kind of showing you what we're talking about here. This is not rocket science. These are lovable places that all the things that Paul talked about, where you've got everything's within walking distance, including jobs. And we're actually figuring out this. I don't know if any of you've heard about the 15-minute city, which has started in Paris. But basically it's looking at how can you create enough density that will support businesses that supply everything you need within walking distance, so that grocers, pharmacies, barbers, jobs, drugstores, liquor stores, et cetera, are all within walking distance. So you might have a vehicle, but you don't need a vehicle. So we've actually calculated, or calculating how many people we have to have in a certain area because you have to support businesses. These putting projects that get put up in remote places where they're required to have retail, the retail just goes empty because retail likes to be with other retail. So we're trying to think about complete neighborhoods that fit into the context, that are affordable and actually give great benefits to the city. And I don't know if Joel's got his mic working yet, but he could take over at this point, or we could go to questions.
Joel, are you on? I'm trying to unmute your phone. You called in on your phone. I'm trying to unmute it, but I think you have to do something to unmute it. I don't know what.
I think it's like *6 or something like that to unmute.
Okay, try *6 on the phone. Such struggles. You want to? Oh, are you there? No, we can't hear you still. Joel Schiavone being speechless. This is like, you know, a world crisis.
Well, Joel's thoughts are well represented in the report, the New Haven at a Crossroads report, so people can go back and read that. We'll drop the link again in the chat, and folks can get a sense of Joel.
Let me say that we sent a letter around. I don't know who all got that.
I also posted that in the chat.
Yeah, and those are basically Joel's. He was going to go through that, and those are his remarks. So,
so I think
got that letter.
What's important here is that we have an approach that we think is viable. The city has a parcel which we think it works for, and what we're hoping the city will do is release an RFP or an RFQ or requests for qualifications and say, this is an approach to development we'd like to see on this parcel. And let us know make proposals to us, either about your qualifications, which is a more limited approach, or formal proposals, and to see what the market brings. And I think Robert and Joel and some others may want to put in a proposal, or there may be others that do it. But it strikes me that there's a different approach here, which I think can produce the kind of neighborhoods that are the kind of development that we'd like to see in New Haven. And it's worth seeing what the response is. And that's what I'd like us to go to the city with and say, what do you think? And they'll kick the tires, and we'll have some discussions with them. And I hope that this group of people and the management team is supportive of taking this kind of approach and having a discussion with the city. So with that, let's turn it over to you guys for questions, comments, responses, criticisms, accolades, whatever you want.
So if anyone has a question or comment, I think you feel free to unmute yourself, and I'll just let Paul.
So Lior has raised his hand. Why don't you go ahead?
Thank you. Thank you all for presenting. I just saw this event pop up on Facebook and thought I'd jump in, and I am so delighted I did. I've followed strong towns and 15-minute city and all these things for a while, and so it's just music to my ears to hear these proposals in New Haven. It's sad that there's so many developments that have happened that are just the big blocks that get plunked down that are going to be eyesores for a long time to come. So every word out of your mouths is just a delight. I bike past that spot daily and have dreamt about all the things that could be in there, even just a park, even if someone just like put some grass down. So very, very cool to hear. I think that hopefully some redevelopment on State Street will also help complement this. I was taking notes on all the things that I liked, but I liked all of it. So I guess my two questions, or maybe three, is how I didn't quite understand how there's one developer but multiple buyers. So we're trying to find one developer to execute on this proposal that you put forward, but it's a different developer, and then it's built, and then there are people who take out mortgages to buy the properties on the development. Is that right?
Yeah, I'll take that because I confused you on that. What's going on is that as a demonstration project, because it would be very risky for someone that had never seen what this is, to do it on their own. So we think that we need to do a sample that people can walk through, touch, kick the tires, as Paul said. Now we're going to come up with whatever I said, 15 to 20 buildings. Now these will be owned by the developer like any other development. But there are three exit strategies. One is that developer can choose to rent them to maintain ownership and rent out the apartments in them. They can also be condominiumized, which is to say that you buy a building, but you don't own the ground under it, and everybody has a condominium fee that pays for the common areas. Or third, the land can be platted so that these are all individual properties, and then you could actually buy a property. But so that is this project. In the future, what we're advocating for is two things. One, that zoning gets changed to make this allowable. And number two, that the people that own large parcels, which includes the city and includes private property owners, consider disassembling their assembled lots, because originally they were all small lots. And then a person such as yourself could buy one of these lots and build a building on it. And it doesn't have to max out. It could be a 2-story building or whatever, but it's an affordable building, and it gets local people involved with creating their own city. And I think it will attract people from other places that can't do that to New Haven, and slowly, as I said, this is an incremental process. It's not a crash from outer space. People will start a communication where they'll begin to see how things are working, and it'll slowly accrue to fill in the missing teeth around the city. Currently, I calculate
a couple more questions pending, so I just wanted to make sure we had time for them. And Leo, are you at a couple? You had 2 more questions or 1 more question?
I did, but I can wait till the other folks go.
Kevin?
2 quick comments. One is, there are affordable housing advocates who sincerely believe that increasing density necessarily leads to gentrification. I believe this belief is unfounded, but it's politically salient. And that's just something you'll have to deal with. Secondly, I think this conversation is related to a related one of what should the city do with its property? I think the city, in fact, should come up with a strategy to deal with excess property. Realistically, one of the factors the city is going to be looking at is maximizing the sales price. And that probably does not bode well for this project. But that should not be the only factor. That's it.
Lana? You have to unmute. Hold on, Robert. Let's let Lana weigh in.
Oh, I thought that was a question.
That was.
All right.
You
Go
want me-
ahead, Robert. Be
Okay,
succinct.
I'll answer it quickly. There's appraiser people that do appraisals, and they're actually very scientific. That is the actual value of the property. So if you want to sell your property for more than its value, good luck. I mean, there are people that do that. The novella, for example, is valued at $20 million, but it sold recently for $40 million. But they pay their taxes, and they will get any loans that they get will be based on the appraisal, because that's what the property is really worth. So yeah, the city can try to sell this for $2 million, but I guarantee that they'll end up giving away taxes in order. I mean, whoever's doing this they have to make money on it. So if you're going to pay $2 million up front, then you're going to get $2 million back at the other end. And this is not gentrification. I won't take up time with that, but It's covered in the booklet.
All right.
Next question.
Hi, I have a comment and a question. So my comment is, I really like this idea. I'm a recent transplant from San Diego, and there we had tons of these big monolithic, huge apartment complexes coming up, and it was not great. And so it's kind of a bummer to see some of those, having moved to New Haven, start to kind of shape the character of New Haven. So I'm really excited for something like this. I love the idea of those skinny streets with some opportunities for agriculture. I think that's great. My question is, and I'm sorry if I didn't see this in the presentation or if I missed you talking about it, but what is for this particular project, what is the expected, so is it a mix of like 1, 2, 3 bedrooms, or what is that expectation? And how does that fit into what we know are the housing needs of people who live in New Haven in terms of the sizes of the units that they need?
Having done the design, I'm answering most of the questions here. This is a limited project. It doesn't answer all. I mean, some people said, what about people with big families? I mean, this is not a project for people with big families. There's other places that can do that, and future of these can do that. These are lofts and 1 bedrooms, and which are actually the apartments in demand right now. So there has been some research put into that.
I think Uri had a question too. I don't know if Uri wants to come on and ask it, or.
Doesn't look like it. We're trying to get Joel on.
Okay, well, Uri in the chat asks, what is the main driver of the lower rent? East Rock has similar building.
Hello, Paul.
Yeah, you're on.
I can't believe it.
Hold on.
What frustration.
I'm gonna
Joel,
try.
turn off your computer mute, Mike.
There's a lot of feedback, Joel.
Turn off the phone?
No,
Yes,
Okay. There. Are we on?
you're on. I'm gonna try and mute you.
Hallelujah.
Okay, I think you're good now. Oop. All right. They gotta turn off the speakers is what they need to do. So Yuri's question was about affordable rents?
how did we do that? There's a whole section in the booklet on that, but to make a simple answer is that we've cut out overhead. When you do these big projects, you have a lot. Well, first of all, the regulations require a lot of overhead. Basically, regulations double the cost of construction. And then you add to that, if you're putting affordable housing or capitally affordable housing, that adds a layer of administration. These big developers have layers of administration, so that you end up with if it's a developer doing a project, it's about $250 $250,000 per unit. If it's an affordable project, I have a colleague in San Francisco who spent a career building capitally affordable housing for $900,000 per unit. These we figure are probably about 100,000 per unit. But once again, we're going to keep on getting creative about how to build these things, and we're looking into different methodologies. This is a bad time, by the way, to be doing building, if any of you know that everything is through the roof right now.
Yeah, the lumber costs are.
Lumber costs, you can't find labor. We have a garden guy we work with, and he says he keeps having to give raises to his employees like weekly because they get a better offer from somebody else. So he's, it's crazy.
So if somebody else, oh, I think Lana has another question about about which regulations in particular are the biggest catalysts for increased building costs. I think maybe that's something that's addressed in the report as well. But if you want to say something about that.
Yeah, there's zoning regulations and building regulations. I won't go and it'll take too much time, but this site actually, it's a BD zone, where they've eliminated most of our regulations. So what we would have to ask for if we go through a PDD process that was recommended by Adam Marchand, is asking for very little, basically to be allowed to make units smaller than 1,000 square feet, and to change the word in the parking requirement from minimum to maximum, which they've done in Hartford. So you can keep all the parking requirements in, but you just, instead of having it a minimum, it's a maximum. So you can have, if you have to have 1.5 parking spaces per dwelling unit, currently minimum, the new way would be that's the maximum. You can have no parking spaces up to 1.5. Basically, parking is really expensive. I mean, only 30% of this city pays, you know, full tax. And you can't blame that on Yale. They do not own 70% of the city. It's all the parking.
Ganstris had a question? There's Joel.
Yeah, this is Anstris. Unless Joel is trying to speak.
Joel, can you turn off your speakers on your computer?
Speaker?
Yeah.
Where?
And the lower left corner.
I think they managed to do it.
Yeah.
Good.
So, I just wanted to offer a comment. You know, a lot of the development that you've shown that is really not what we want. Zoning was changed to accommodate that exactly. And as many of you know, I work for the New Haven Urban Design League, and we battled valiantly to try to not get like Union Street and Audubon area and the Coliseum rezoned to allow these platform buildings, what they call the Texas Donut buildings. They're very destructive to community. They're something that many planners call roach hotels, because people tend to go in and they don't come out. So it isn't like Worcester Square with its multiple doors and stoops, where there's just natural street life that develops from it, that develops community. And the other thing about it in terms of prosperity for more people, besides the taxes that would be generated, that would be higher than these real estate developed buildings, is that the profits don't leave the city. That if you took, let's say that $6,000 that would be the profit from one of these units that could stay in the pocket of a homeowner or a building owner, and you took the equivalent of that in one of these gigantic REIT developments, these are all real estate investment partnerships, and all of them are companies that are outside of Connecticut. They're not even in New Haven. So they're not much different than something like a Rite Aid, where, you know, minimum wage jobs are provided, but all the profits just simply leave. So, you know, the question that Kevin McCarthy raises, to expand that a little bit about what's a fair sale price, you have to look at all of the other ways that something can contribute to the economy of the city. And you have to, and in these other types of projects and rezoning that have been so destructive, how they have actually been very destructive to the social life and the economy of the city. So that's my comment.
Bill, do you want to say anything now that, do we hear you?
I'm not sure we got him on. No, we can't hear you, Joel.
Do you have your phone?
No, we've
You
been
hear
trying,
us?
but then we get feedback from the phone.
Well, he has to have the phone or the
Right.
computer. Can't have them both.
Anyway, somebody asked, what are we asking? What would be helpful to pushing this? And I think figuring out how to give feedback to economic development, that this is an idea worth pursuing, worth the city evaluating, I think would be helpful. And I don't know what the best way is to do that. Kathleen Krolak was on the call for a while. She had to jump off, but Kathleen is one of the economic development staffers. She said something like, excellent presentation, thank you. I'm sorry to have to leave the meeting now for parental responsibilities. But we know, as I said in my slides, we know what the market's delivering. We know what we like. This approach seems to deliver more of what we like. And it would be great if the city would pursue it. And I think stressing that to them is the next step in the process, I'd say.
I would add to that to say that somehow everyone thinks that these big projects are home runs. And what I hope to show with part of the presentation is how they actually aren't. And in order to get, since you can't get subsidies from the federal or the state government anymore, the city is all there's left, and the only thing they can offer is reduced taxes. 360 State Street, the big 32-story building at the corner of State and Chapel, for example, was built for $200 million, but its appraisal is $70 million. And then assessment is 70% of that. So that's how that works. So,
Robert,
are you there?
Robert? Yes, are we here?
Yeah.
Hello?
Go ahead. You have the
You
floor
hear me?
for about 5 minutes.
I'll be quick. This is Joel Schiavone, formerly called Mr. Downtown. Now I'm going to be called Mr. Inclusionary Zoning. I want to just sum up what you've heard today about what we are and what we believe. Leave it in everybody's mind. We advocate a return to neighborhood revitalization and construction, a forgotten lost art which we used to do very well in the Haven and which we will do again because of economic circumstances. We are against development of big blocks apartments, buildings forming gated communities, prohibiting neighborhood access. We are against municipal subsidies and tax giveaways which significantly impact all taxpayers. We are for walkability to all one's needs and against car dependency. We are for fat cutting, lean urbanism, and against corpulent conventional development. We are against regulations that make it impossible to build economically, particularly so-called affordable housing, ballyhooed cross-country right now. Enforced procedures and regulations make affordable housing average $600,000 per unit. We are for eliminating regulations that prevent building housing that's affordable at a fraction of the cost of affordable housing. We are for unleashing the swarm of people wanting to make their cities better places to live, held back by indecipherable procedures and regulatory barriers. And when we are for ordinary local people enabled to build all affordable multiple family house buildings with an apartment for themselves and other affordable apartments to cover expenses for the building. Removing living expenses for city residents who invest in such a program makes New Haven affordable and cultivates advocates for making New Haven a better place to live. So in conclusion, we outline details of a demonstration project on Wall Street in New Haven, which promises affordable housing, affordable construction for rents in the range of what HUD identifies as 30 to 40% AMI, adjusted median income, well below affordable housing rents in big box projects. So that's what we're for. That's what this is all about. I want to thank Aaron and Paul for organizing this, and particularly Robert Orr for his eloquent descriptions. Thank you.
Thanks. Aaron, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good note to close on. I love that metaphor of unleashing the swarm, by the way. I think that's really perfect. So, I mean, unless there are any burning questions, I think maybe we'll leave it there and thank Robert and Paul and Joel for joining us and presenting these ideas. We will definitely share the recording of this in the Facebook event, and we'll also send it out to our downtown Worcester Square management team distribution list. And we'll continue to watch this this parcel, 10 Wall Street, and what the city is planning to do with it. And if there's an RFP, I'm sure we'll discuss this again at the management team. So so stay tuned, and thank you all for joining us tonight.
Let me say one last thing, that if we go through this PDD process, it's an aldermanic process. So what we have to do is convince the alders that this is a good project.
And just so people know, PDD, I'm not sure we ever said exactly what that is. That's a planned development district, and it allows you to go outside the standard process of asking for zoning relief. So you're not subject to that the zoning that is currently prevalent in that area. Is that a fair description?
Yep. But my only point is that we need to get the alders on our side.
Right. So yeah. So if there is an RFP for this, or if people want to support this particular vision, please let the mayor know, let the Economic Development Administration know, and let your alders know that it's something that you support.
All right, everybody. Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it. Good night.
Bye.
Thanks, Paul.